I've been doing a lot of thinking lately, about who I am in this world, global politics, stuff like that. But what I've really been thinking about, what's been really keeping me awake at night, it's that, really, when you think about it, every fighting game character is a bit weird, right? I mean, you just have to be a bit quirky to fight literally everyone in the normally fairly big-sized rosters these guys are from, and that includes their own off-colored clones. And I know that in some fighting games, like Street Fighter, there's a tournament or something along those lines, and I guess that kind of explains why everyone is fighting each other. But still, there's some really powerful people pretty consistently joining those tournaments. So even still, you kind of have to have a few screws loose in order to be a proper fighting game character. That being said, that must mean that somebody's gotta be the weirdest, right? So I decided to look into it, but I kind of ran into a big issue. See, I found 15 different fighting game characters that are all deserving of being called the weirdest fighting game character, and I just can't decide between which of the 15. So, I'm going to present each fighter to you, the viewer, and then you can tell me in the comments which of the 15 you think is the weirdest. Or if there's any super weird characters that I just happen to miss out on. Oh, also, I did a one character per series rule, because if I didn't, this list would be a whole lot longer. I'm looking at you, Guilty Gear. But with that out of the way, let's get on to it with number 15. Starting off with the classic Tekken series, which, to be honest, I'm not too familiar with, but I don't feel too bold for putting this character as the series' weirdest. Because you see, this is Alex, and Alex is a dinosaur, and he's a dinosaur with boxing gloves. According to the Tekken lore, which I found on the Tekken wiki, Alex was made alongside a kangaroo named Roger, of all things. And he comes from a scientist who did the whole finding DNA in amber thing from Jurassic Park. However, instead of putting the dinosaur in, say, a zoo, he decided to put him in a boxing ring alongside a cast of mostly humans, which is why Alex really sticks out like a scaly thumb. But at least Alex is an animal. You know, something with flesh and stuff like that. Because not every fighter here is. And sure, obviously there's going to be a few robotic fighters here and there. And there is that one tank from Guilty Gear, which is stand out. But still, at least it's something clearly created with fighting in mind. The same cannot be said, however, for Hornet from Fighters Mega Mix. Fighters Mega Mix, for those who don't know, is essentially Sega Super Smash Bros., in the sense that it takes characters from different Sega properties and has them duke it out. And considering Sega's arcade game, Daytona USA, was a bit of a hit, it does make sense to have a rep in the game. It's just that it's a little unnerving, at least to me, how the car just moves, with floating wheels making up for the hands and feet, and the Hornet always being vertical, having it bend and move almost like a human would, and like punches like a human would, except it's a car. It's just kind of creepy. However, this next character is anything but creepy, which is wild considering it's from Mortal Kombat of all games, with its weirdest character being Mocap. As you can probably glean, Mocap is just that, a guy who does motion capture, though what you might not have guessed is that he's a reference to specifically Carlos Piscina, who does a lot of the mocap for Mortal Kombat. What's fun about mocap is that he is a canon character in the story, as he works with Johnny Cage, doing mocap for his movies and stuff. Also, if you punch him in Mortal Kombat Deception, this will happen.
Oh, my balls!
Speaking of lore, let's talk about Street Fighter's weirdest character. From Street Fighter V, it's G. Just going by surface appearance, G is already a pretty noticeable looking dude. He's pretty tall, has this weird gold going around him, and he looks oddly similar to Abe Lincoln, of all people. Though it's really when you start to look into the story of G where things get confusing. First off, he considers himself president of the world, and considering the fact that the gold moving around on him is the continents, and he clearly has some magical stuff going for him, it seems G has a fair bit of credibility. G is also weirdly similar to another character that I've seen people claim to be the oddest character in Street Fighter, the ever so silent Q. Despite Q having a completely different personality from G, if you look at some of the animations, which are pretty similar to one another, as well as one of G's costumes that does make him look like Q, it starts to make you wonder what the backstory that G and Q have. But then again, Street Fighter 6 doesn't have G or Q, so maybe it just doesn't matter. Oh well. Welcome to the segment that I would like to title The Part with Real Actual Human Beings that are, for whatever reason, in fighting games. Catchy title, I know. Anyways, as the title suggests, there's a few too many fighting games that decided to just have regular dudes in them. which is essentially the perfect way to make a fighting game character just feel so out of place. Starting us out with Death Jam Fight for New York, which is already an odd concept for a game because it's a mix between wrestling gameplay like you'd see in a WWE game and also hip hop artists. Which, by the way, I know this isn't a 2D fighter like pretty much every other game on this list, but it's a legit charming game and it still has a community of players, including the occasional tournament, which just made me feel like talking about it. But back to the character list. So, obviously, you have a few real people in there, like Flava Flav and Danny Trejo, but if I had to pick just one person as the weirdest, it'd probably be Ice-T. Though that's mostly because nowadays he's mostly known for being that guy in the mediocre spin-off of the mediocre cop show. Speaking of game concepts that are one step away from being unbelievable, Fightin' Right. It's a fighting game entirely made up of real and acclaimed authors. Such authors include Shakespeare, Lovecraft, and Tolstoy, but I think my choice for the weirdest has to be Ernest Hemingway. And that's mostly because, have you heard about all the stuff that guy did? Dude used to work for the KGB, he ran a village militia near France, and he got into several different plane crashes. And here he is, a digital recreation that can wombo combo old Dostoevsky. But speaking of authors who write fiction, there's also a fighting game called Farm Joe, which is all about Les Miserables, which, to be honest, is a story that I've never really interacted with. But I guess we'll throw in Jean Valjean in as a weirdest character, because he's the only guy from Les Miserables that I actually know. And also, he has a funny sounding name. Back to real people, or at least debatably real people. Because you see, Fight of Gods is a game with a cast featuring mythological gods who may or may not be real. I don't know. I have yet to die. And while characters like Zeus and Athena make enough sense for this game, some of the options aren't. Notably, you have some pacifists like Jesus and Buddha, and also Santa Claus. But I've got to be honest, I have absolutely no idea what Moses is doing on this roster. Because, you do have a few people here who were regular people, but then got deified, like Buddha and Guan Yu, but Moses has always been pretty consistently just some guy. Like, sure, he did the neat trick with the Red Sea and wrote on some tablets, and he is pretty important to all Abrahamic religions, but that still doesn't explain why he's out here punching Anubis. Not to keep on this topic, but Moses just isn't a god at all. He was just a human leader of a very religious group of people. In modern day times, that would almost be like if the President of the United States was a fighting game character. Wait, why does that sound like foreshadowing? Yes, so Battle for Presidency is a game that sure does exist. Well, it barely exists. I don't think there's any way to play this game nowadays. Or at least if there is, I couldn't find it. But it did exist at one point, and boy howdy, it sure is a fighting game featuring presidents of the United States. And if I did have to pick the weirdest one, I'd probably go with Taft. Because, like, genuinely, who really cares about Taft? At least the others are notable in some way, but Taft is just... he's just Taft. But now that we're out of the endless pit that is the fact that there's too many real people as playable fighting game characters, let's get back to some good old-fashioned fictional characters. Characters like Super Mario. No, I'm not talking about Super Smash Bros. As we all know, the weirdest character in that game is Kirby. Because seriously, what the heck is up with that guy? He's clearly evil. Either way, the Mario I'm talking about comes from a game you've probably never even heard of. A game titled Dong Dong Never Die. Dong Dong Never Die is a fighting game from China that sets out to parody fighting games like Street Fighter and King of Fighters in the most bizarre ways possible. One such way is the introduction of classic Nintendo game character Mario, who is one of two characters not depicted in the FMV style that most of the Dong Dong characters are in. The other being this Stickman character, who was also a pretty strong contender for this list. I do get that Mario was supposed to, like, be a joke, like it's purposefully odd and silly, which, to be fair, most of the characters on this list are purposefully strange. It's just that, why'd you have to go and give Mario Akuma from Street Fighter's moveset? And why only Mario in particular? And why is there a character called Violent Dong Dong? That last one's not really relevant, but still. I guess the only thing I can know for certain is that Dong Dong, well, you never die. A while ago, I mentioned Guilty Gear in particular as having a lot of strange characters. And I should know, as Strive is literally the only fighting game that I play. And one of my favorite characters to play is this guy called Faust, who's a super lanky and honestly kind of unnerving guy who can extend and bend in these genuinely kind of unnerving ways. And also, he can vor you. Needless to say, I thought he was a shoo-in for the list. But, just in case, I decided to go back through some of the old Guilty Gear games. And that's when I found Leopoldin. Leopoldin is a dog mixed with an ancient gear, being controlled by a wizard, and is so massive compared to the rest of the Guilty Gear cast that it's honestly hard to believe that he's a playable character and not like a boss character or something. Which makes sense because while double checking all my research, I found out that he's not a playable character and is actually a boss character. So, welcome back to the list, Faust. Please, don't eat me. Hey, do you remember, memes? You know, those old things? Yeah, they made a fighting game about those. It's called Fight of Animals. And I just... Here, let me read a little bit of the game's official Steam description, verbatim. Ahem. Animal memes such as Power Hook Dog, Mighty Fox, Magic Squirrel, and more are now become fighters. Exclamation mark. Exclamation mark. Out of all the games with a really unusual hook for a cast, this is, sort of ironically, probably the one I find the least funny. Like, Abe Lincoln and Violent Dong Dong feel like actual fun jokes, well, this feels more like a gimmick mainly meant to grab people's attention because it's about things people know, but it's still a fighting game based on animal memes, so I kinda had to put it on here. I guess for the weirdest, I'll put up this seal that looks like an egg for some reason. I'll be real, I'm not entirely sure what meme this is based on, and I don't really care. So, moving on now. Now, this is a character I genuinely really like. From the Marvel vs. Capcom series, it's my boy, Flamingo. Now, as the title suggests, Marvel vs. Capcom is a game series with rosters primarily consisting of characters from Marvel and also, get this, Capcom. However, Amigo is a Marvel vs. Capcom 2 original, not, not the only original character in the game, mind you. There's two others. One is a granddaughter of another Capcom character, which is a cool concept, by the way, and the other is the main protagonist of the story, and she's a Sky Pirate, which is also always just a genuinely cool concept. Love me some Sky Pirates. However, Miko, despite being the lovable little being that he is not a Sky Pirate. He is in fact a plant that's really good at fighting and is focused on stopping all the plants from dying via this evil wind. He's also canonically down bad for a Lovecraftian-esque entity, Shumagorath. And like, who isn't? So, if there is one takeaway from this video, it's that even though Amigo might not have his own game, he absolutely should. Get this man an entire franchise, in fact. I don't care that they confirmed him dead in Marvel vs. Capcom 3. I choose to believe that isn't canon because it's just too heartbreaking to believe otherwise. Hashtag save Amingo. And now for the final two. I think the OC characters are a bit more fun to talk about, so I'll save one of those for last. Which means now I have to talk about Xenophage, a game which every time I Google it, stuff about some Destiny 2 side quest appears instead. Xenophage is also a game that takes the Mortal Kombat approach of focusing in on bloody fatalities, but with a twist of having most of the roster be different aliens. However, it's not the aliens that I'm concerned about. What I'm concerned about is the dinosaur. The dinosaur named Barney. Barney the dinosaur. Barney the dinosaur is, in this game, he's a secret gag character and all he can do is shoot hearts. And if he gets hit, he just falls on the floor, which isn't at all more accurate. But then again, if it was, he would be an absolutely broken character. To be honest, I think it would have been funnier if he was like an actual character. Like, make Barney a proper Shoto, you cowards. Victory! And with that out of the way, onto our last character. And you know, it's been quite the journey. I think this little experiment really helped show one of the reasons fighting games are just so special. Despite being a competitive genre, it really helps people get together and have fun. Whether it's over a silly character, or if it's bonding over the weird lore that these games often have. And I know some of you guys will think these characters are ugly and should be tossed aside and replaced by more normal characters. But I think that even though these characters are weird, there's still something so fascinating about all of them. And even, dare I say, a little bit oh my god. My god, what is that? But burn it! Burn it with fire! Burn it with all of the fire! Okay. So let me explain. This is Kusa Rigetto. He's from the Samurai Showdown series, and just there's a lot of fighting game characters that try and tap into some horror elements, but this guy is the only one that I would say really succeeds. And that is in part due to his backstory, where he was kind of a normal guy at first, but then he started to eat people, and then he just did not stop, and now he's an evil ghoul. And I know this might just be a me thing, but just the idea of being transformed into that thing, it's genuinely pretty unnerving. And his giant stature and powerful moves just give off such a threat vibe in ways not many other fighting game characters can. And that's, well, pretty weird. And that's all the weird characters for today. If you want to see some more stuff like this, please give me a like or a sub to let me know. And while you're at it, comment down below who you think the weirdest fighting game character is, whether it's a character on my list or not. And also, this is my first real video in this sort of style, if you couldn't already tell, so constructive criticism is appreciated. And with that out of the way, I was Robin from Channel Spellbinder, and I hope to see you all next video.